In this video, I'm going to show you how to use fragments in a simple list view, detail view type of example. So I'm going to jump right into it and quickly create two new fragments. So if you go into your Java folder, the one that's without the Android test and test there, and I'm going to go there and say new, and I want to go down to fragment, and let's use a blank fragment. So use fragment and the one with blank in brackets. And then we're going to call this one the list fragment. So you can call it list frag. We want to create a layout XML. So I'm going to use this one as a list underscore frag as the name. And I want to start everything afresh. So I'm not going to click on any of those. If I say finish now, just like a normal activity, it creates that fragment for you. Let's just wait for Android Studio to get that going. So there's the list fragment. So we're going to have two fragments on the main activity. One will be the list fragment and the other one will be the detail fragment. So I'm going to create a new fragment again, blank one, and call this one the detail fragment. And let's just call this also detail underscore frag and deselect both of those. Right, so there we've got the list fragment and we've got the detail fragment as Java files. Let's look at the resources layout folder. You can see that we've got the detail frag XML and the list frag XML. So let's just quickly open up one of the list frag or the list frag there. I'm going to delete the text view there. And for this example, let's just put a background color there. So I'm going to add a background color. Let's use the accent for this one, and we're going to save. And then for the detail frag, just go into the text as well. I'm also going to delete the text view, and let's add a background of, let's say, the primary color. So we've got two fragments, the list frag, which will basically show the accent color, and the detail fragment that will show the blue color, the normal primary color of our application. Okay, so now if we go to the main activity, so in the main activity, I'm going to use a linear layout. And then I'm going to remove that text view there. I'm going to remove the padding, and I'm going to add the orientation property and set it to vertical. Okay, so this is the layout now. We've got a normal linear layout that we can work with. And then I just want to quickly go to your detail frag and list frag. Okay, that's fine. So let's go to the main activity. So in the main activity, or the activity main XML file, I'm just going to move my screen to landscape mode so that we can clearly see what's happening there. So what I want to do now is to drag in a linear layout again as part of this layout. This time it must be a vertical linear layout. So if you look at the component tree now, we've got a linear layout that's vertical, and inside of it we've got a linear layout that's, should be horizontal. That's horizontal. So we've got a linear layout that's vertical and then a linear layout that's horizontal. And for the horizontal linear layout, let's set the height to wrap the content. Okay, and then we're going to drag in two fragments now on that linear layout. So the first fragment, let me just look at that again. So you're going to drag in the fragment to your horizontal linear layout. And the first one we want to have there will be the list frag. And we're going to say, okay. For the second one, I'm going to drag in that to the horizontal linear layout as well. That will be the list frag. So those are the two fragments that we created now. So if you have a look at them quickly, you'll see there's the list frag first. I've got both as list frag now. We just delete the one. Where's the detail frag? Okay, so we've got the list frag and then the detail frag. Now if you look at your display of the activity there, you can see that we need to pick a layout there. So I'm going to go to the list frag and pick a layout. And then for the list frag, I'm going to use the list underscore frag. That's the XML file. And then for the detail frag, if I click on pick layout, I want to use the detail frag one. Okay, and then let me just go to that linear layout again and say match parent there. For for this fragment, match parent, for that fragment, match parent. And there you can see the two fragments now on the screen. So I can see there's my, this one is the list fragment, and that one is the detail fragment. So you can see both displaying nicely on the screen now. So let's say we want to go and change a bit more. Let's go into the linear layout, and for the two fragments, I'm going to set the width property to 0 dp on both of them. And when you set the width property to 0 dp, then your weight property comes into play. So let's say that one we want is 1 and this one we want is 3, which means that on the linear layout that's horizontal, this first fragment will take up one of the 4 spaces. 1 plus 3 equals 4, one of the 4 spaces, and this fragment will take up the last 3. So it will look something like this. Not very nice. Let's make it 2, 5. Okay, that looks better. So we've going to have a list view there, and then some detail or detailed information on the right hand side. So if you click something there, we'll have something on that side. For the next part of this video, we're going to see how we can do a list view in the list fragment. So in the list fragment, remember, we only have the background color there, and in the detail fragment, we only have the background color there as blue, this one is pink, or the accent color. So if we want to show some items as a list view on the list fragment, I've created an arrays file. So if you go to the values folder and you right click to your values folder, and you're going to say new value resource file, and you can say arrays. So that's what I did basically, to say arrays, say OK, and then it generates this arrays.xml file for you. So you'll see when you generate this file, you've got a resources tag, and that's basically it. So I've created 2 arrays, one called pieces and one called descriptions. So this is the list view that we want to have, the pieces. So we're going to have the king, the queen, the bishop, the knight, the rook, the pawn. And when the guy clicks, or the user clicks on one of these items, we show the description for that specific item. So these are 2 parallel arrays that we can use in order to show the information on the 2 fragments. So in order to create a new array, this is a string array, the name is pieces, and you use the item tags to add items into your array. So if you go back to the main activity main, so what we want to show on the list view or the list fragment is basically the king, queen, bishop, knight, rook, and pawn. And when we click on an item, we show the correct detail view on the right hand side. So in order to do this, let's go to the list fragment. And because the example of having a list on the left hand side and a detail view on the right hand side is used so often, they've created a class called list fragment that basically contains a list. And then for that list fragment, we use another method there. So we're going to say code override methods, and then we're going to use onActivity created. So we use the onActivity created method to do this. And then we can basically just go and call set list adapter, and then indicating your new adapter. So we're going to use a new array adapter of type string, because remember, what we want to show now is basically these items in the list view. So it will be the king, queen, bishop, and all of them are strings. It's just a string array. So we use a string array adapter. For the first argument, we're just going to pass in this .getActivity. For the second argument, you need to indicate the resource file that you're going to use as the layout. So I'm going to use Android, one of the predefined layouts. So we're going to say android.r.layout. And then we're going to use the simple list item 1. So you can search for simple list item 1. And then for the next argument, it basically needs your array that you want to use. So I'm going to say get resources dot get string array, and I'm going to say r dot array dot, and you can see there's pieces and descriptions. So we're just going to go with pieces there, which basically means to this adapter, or to the adapter of this list fragment, we set this array as the items we want in the list view, and this is the layout for every list view item. So let's run this quickly and see how it runs. Okay, so now here you can see that we've got the list view there nicely set up. And by using this r.layout.simple list item 1, we've got them in a specific look and feel. After this video, I'll do a video on how to create your own list view, to define your own list view and how it should look. But this is one of the predefined layouts. So just giving the items in a list view for you. So you can see we've got the list items there, and you can see I've turned the phone to landscape view. So if you click on any one of those items, nothing will basically work because we haven't wired them up yet. So on the right hand side, when we click on one of these items, I want to show a detailed view, and that will be the second array. That will be the details for that specific item that was selected. So one important thing to know is that your fragments cannot directly talk to one another, which means that we need to talk to the activity that hosts these two fragments. So the first, when we click the item, we want to send what item was clicked to the main activity, which hosts these two fragments. And then the main activity can talk back to the detail fragment. Now, in order for this list fragment to talk to the main activity, we do that by using an interface. So let's go to the list fragment. So there's the list fragment, and we're going to define a new interface. So I'm going to call this public interface, and let's call this one chess piece listener. And we must have one method here that will be public, let's say void on chess piece selected, and then in brackets we're going to have int index. So basically when we communicate, we want to pass through the index from this list fragment to the main activity, and from the main activity back to the detail fragment, we show that specific index selected. So if the user click on, let's say, the queen, which is at position 1, so it starts at 0, 1, so at position 1 gets clicked, we pass along that index, and we know in this array we can go to position 1, which will be that one, and show that one. So we're going to use this interface with this method called onChessPieceSelected. So let's create a variable at the top, and we're going to call that one, let's say, private chess piece listener, and let's just call it chess piece listener as well. And then we're going to create a method, or we're going to use a method, override a method called onAttach. So there's the onAttach method. So as soon as the method or this specific list fragment gets attached to the main activity, then this method will run. Or if this fragment gets attached to another activity, doesn't matter which one, then the onAttach method will run. Now in the onAttach method, we're going to use a try and a catch block. And what we will try and catch here is a class cast exception. And then when that occurs, we're going to force a new exception to occur. So we're going to say throw new class cast exception, but we're going to add our own content there. So we're going to use the context that was passed through in this method, that context there, that will basically be the activity that's using this fragment. And we're going to call the toString method on it to basically show the name of that specific activity. And then we're going to just say must implement the interface called, let me just see what we call it, chess piece listener. Okay, so that's basically the message that will occur. So what we're trying to do here is to force the activity that's using this fragment to implement chess piece listener. Because if it implements chess piece listener, we can send through information. But if it doesn't, it won't work. So then we throw the exception and tell basically the coder or the programmer that's using this specific list fragment to actually implement that specific interface. So what we'll try and do here is to say that chess piece listener equals, and let's cast it to a chess piece listener, and then using that context. And remember, context now will refer to the activity that's using this fragment, or that's hosting this fragment. So on that activity, we cast it to a chess piece listener, which means that if that activity doesn't implement chess piece listener, it will throw this exception. We're casting it to this specific type, chess piece listener. So if this activity has got implements chess piece listener, then we've got a link with this variable to that activity, and we can start using it. But if it does not implement chess piece listener, it will throw the exception, and the programmer knows it must go and implement this specific chess piece listener. So now we have the way that we're going to communicate with the main activity. So one last method we need here is a method that will run as soon as the user clicks an item in the list view. So if it clicks an item in the list view, we want to activate it. So it's like activating a button. So the method we're going to use for that is called the onListItemClick. The onListItemClick method. So there's the onListItemClick method. We don't need the call to super, so I'm just going to remove that one. And then you can see that when this, as soon as I click an item inside of this list view, it will activate this method and pass along the position. And that position will be the position that we clicked in this list view. Okay, so what we want to do then, because if our main activity has got chess piece listener implemented, then chess piece listener there, this variable, will hold basically a reference to that specific activity. So on that variable then, chess piece listener, we're going to call, and there's only one method we can use, and that's the one specified in your chess piece listener. So that's the only method we can use there. So I'm going to use that method, and I'm going to pass in the position. So now if the main activity implements chess piece listener, then that method will be called on the main activity, passing through the position, and then we can go on from there. Okay, so now I think we've got everything set up for the list fragment. So let's save, and let's go to the main activity now. So in the main activity, we need to have implements, and we call that one chess piece listener. And now it's going to give you an error there because there's a method that you must have there. Let's just use Alt-Enter, implement methods, and there's the method onChessPieceSelected, and you can see there's the onChessPieceSelected. So now in the list fragment, when we click an item there, what's going to happen in the list frag? The onListItemClick method executes, getting the position. Then we call chessPieceListener, which is a connection to the main activity now, and we call onChessPieceSelected, passing in the position. So what happens? That position gets passed to the index there, and now we have the position this side. So now for the last part is to actually show on the detail fragment. So if I click in an item in the list view, we've got that position now, and now we want to go and show something on the list, or the detail fragment. So if we quickly go to the detail fragment and we go to the text, let's if yours is not changed to linear layout, just change it to a linear layout that's vertical. I'm going to remove the background color there to keep it white. And then if we go and put it on landscape view, let's drag in a text view there. And we can call that text view TV. Just get to the text view there. Let's call it TV details. And for that text view, let's set a margin. A layout margin of, let's say, 10. If it gives me a chance to type something there. Okay, let's say 10 there. And then let's go down and set the text style to bold. And I think for the rest it's fine. Okay, so there's the text view. So on that text view, we want to set the text. So if I run this now, it will just change to a white background with the text view there. And that's where we want to actually go and set the text. So let's see on how that one runs now. So there we go. We click on one of the items in the list view, and then we want to show something on that text view. So that's important that your text view there has got an ID. And now on the main activity, because the main activity basically hosts the fragment, I can directly have access to that fragment. So I'm going to define a text view here, and let's call it TV details. And then in the onCreate, I'm going to set up that TV details equals text view. Find the view by its ID. Right, so TV details is set up. Now what I want to do in the on chess piece selected, we can actually now go and set that text to that specific text view. So the first thing we need is to have a reference to that string array that we created. We called it descriptions. Now remember, in the arrays XML, there's the descriptions array. So we want to get a link to it so that we can use these values. So we say string descriptions equals get resources again, dot get string array, and then r dot array dot descriptions. So now we have got a link to that descriptions array, and we can actually now go and just set the details to that text view. So we're going to say set text, and we're going to go with descriptions at a specific position, and remember the position that was passed through is now the index. Now let's run this and see how it runs. Okay, so when it starts, you can see it still shows text view, but if I click on an item, it shows the bishop, the knight, the rook, the pawn, everything working 100%. And that's by using the interface to communicate from the list activity, or from the list fragment to the list, or to the activity, the main activity. And from the main activity, we change whatever we need to change on the detail view. So you can see that we've got one problem here. So I'm just going to stop this again and run it from scratch again. Okay, so you can see when the activity gets restarted, I've got just the word text view there. But I actually want to show maybe the king, the very first item I want to start showing already when the screen opens up. So how can we do that? If we go back to the list fragment, as soon as this onActivity created method is run, we can actually go to this chess piece listener, and we can call that on chess piece selected and just pass in a 0 there. So as soon as the activity basically gets created, we make that selection, passing that through to the main activity, and that main activity will set it. So let's run it again. And there it starts with the king already selected. Then if I click on queen, bishop, knight, rook, pawn, everything working exactly like we want. So I hope you've learned something from this video. This is just showing a list view and a detail view using fragments.